I'm thankful for being able to come to you today. I like to say, "Bera kutet Yahweh de Hamvarak." And say, "Baruch Yahweh de Hamvarak, the La Lam Wayed." And the Baruch Atah Yahweh, the Eloheinu, the Melech Halam, the Adishered Bakar Banu, the Mikol, Hamamayim, the Benethan, the Torah To, Baruch Atah Yahweh, the Noten HaTorah. And Baruch Atah Yahweh, the Eloheinu, the Melech Halam, Asher Nathan Lainu, the Torah Timet, and Wekaye Alam, the Natada, the Batokinu, the Baruch Atah Yahweh, the Noten HaTorah. That is to say, blessed are you, Yahweh, you are the blessed one. We bless you, Yahweh, for you the blessed one for all eternity. We bless you, Yahweh, for you are Elohim. You are the King of the universe who selected us from all the peoples. You give us your Torah. Blessed are you, Yahweh, the giver of the Torah. We bless you, Yahweh. You are our Elohim, the King of the universe, who has given us the Torah of truth and implanted eternal life within us. We bless you, Yahweh, for you are the giver of the Torah. Hallelujah, hallelujah, hallelujah. Praise be to our Elohim, Yahweh. Let's go ahead and get started in our study tonight. Right off the top, I say shalom to you, and I'd like to share my screen with you right quick. Here we are. This week, our Torah portion will be read and should have been beginning on the first day of the week out of what we would call Bahar. Bahar, okay, right here. It's only 2 chapters. Actually, it looks like it's just one chapter, 25 and 1, all the way to 26 and 2. So just basically one chapter, which means that it's not that it's going to be a long Torah portion, but what they'll do is they'll give you a little bit every single day and want you to really meditate upon it. So the shorter that they are, the more important that they are, okay? Often at times, a lot of words are used and we think we need to hear more and more and more. What I'm finding in the Torah is that, sometimes when Yah's talking to us, it's just the little things that he wants us to really focus on, so it doesn't have to be a whole bunch of, that he wants us to meditate upon. The brain can only take so much, in study, it can only capture so much information. But what we do know is that this is a very important Torah portion. The ba right here has to do with what we call the Hebrew letter bet, okay? And the bet is the tent, which we would call our house, which would be called a dwelling, okay? Har in Hebrew has to do, H-A-R, okay? Har is a mountain. Forgive my writing. Har is a mountain, okay? So in this case, this Torah portion is dealing with a location that has to do with the mountain, okay? In a tent, you can either be in the tent, okay? Or it could be on or with, okay? So in Hebrew, they're going to use this in particular letter, which is a bet, to say that, hey, I want you to understand where you're located. It's a what they would call a preposition. See here? It's a preposition, and it means on the mountain. That's what this means. So let me ask you a question. From what you know about the Torah, what happens on a mountain? What are some of the things that have happened on a mountain? What's that? You got it?
Moshe gets the 10 words.
Gets the 10 words. Absolutely. The Hadavarim. Absolutely correct. Okay. So he gets the 10 words, right? Yah tells him a lot of things too. Also there, he gets the 10 words to put down on the 2 tablets of stone. And he does that on multiple occasions. So Moshe has went up on the mountain on several occasions, not just once. He's went up there several times for several different reasons. Okay. So this in particular week, what Yah is telling us to do, it's literally like he's telling us, like, I need you to understand or come and hear what I'm about to tell you, because anytime he speaks from this mountain, It's either to, tell them I'm going to, I'm making a decision, right? At one point, I'm going to give you my covenant. I'm going to meet you there. I'm going to talk to you. I'm going to speak to you from the mountain in fire. And then also too, when Moshe was up there, he received the instructions. And then he says, hey, you need to hurry up and go down. And Yah was, deciding whether or not he wanted to kill all of Israel. And so Moshe went back up to the mountain. Okay. And he said, and he was up there for 40 days and 40 nights additional, literally begging Yah, laying before our creator to ask him not to destroy Israel. Okay. Then Yah tells him to go down, and he went down, and he says, okay, now go ahead. Now that I've decided that I'm not going to destroy Israel, now I want you to go ahead and cut out, 2 stone tablets again. And I need you to come up here again. And then he wrote the exact same words that he did as the first, okay, which is the covenant with Israel. I want to share with you some other thoughts of individuals so you can kind of get some comparison, because that's what the Torah allows us to do, which is to make examination on things and work through, what people are saying, because that's where last week we were talking about what's been said, and what can be said can actually either, what they would say, justify a person in court, or it can actually condemn a person, right? So let's look at what one of these other people said to kind of tie us into what the creator's saying, so we can get some comparison here, make some reasonable examination and find out who should we be listening to, right? So in the book of Romans, okay, chapter number 7, I wanted to start in chapter number 8, and let me just give you a little background on it right quick. I was doing my Torah portion this week, and I have a Bible app, and I pushed on the button, and I said, you know what? There's a woman on there giving a testimony, and she was so excited about, Romans chapter 8, verse number 1. And she read this in particular verse with so much enthusiasm that it was funny, but it was actually sad too when I was listening to her, because I used to believe that same thing that she was talking about. And so I felt like it was necessary for us to kind of get a little preview of where we came from, because if you kind of know where you came from, you'll know exactly why you're going the direction that you're going. So let's start in chapter number 7 to get some context here, and listen to what Paul says first. Okay. It says, so the Torah is kadosh, right? And it says that that is, the commandment is kadosh. It's just, it's good. Verse 13, then did something good become for me the source of death? That's the question. Did something good become for me the source of death? He's saying that the Torah, okay, and this is why people around the world are listening to, saying that the Torah doesn't, it doesn't have any validity. It's in the past, it's old, and what it does, it brings death to you, okay? He said, heaven forbid. Rather, it's sin working death in me through something good, so that sin might be clearly exposed to sin, and so that sin through the commandment might come to be experienced as sinful beyond measure. These type of talks and these type of words that he's using, or is being expressed here, is sometimes very confusing. It's a lot of word games, okay? But let's just try to work with it. He says, for we know that the Torah is of the Spirit, but as for me, I'm bound to the old nature, sold to sin as a slave. I want you to write that down. He's saying that you and I are sold to sin as a slave. In our Torah portion this week, which we'll find later on during the week, I'm not going to cover today, we find out that we're not sold to sin. We're actually sold, or actually been purchased by the Creator, okay? He said they were sold to sin as a slave. So you and I are slaves to sin. And that's because you and I have, what is sin? Let's define it. What is it? Do you guys remember?
Missing the mark.
Yes. So to miss the mark is, here's the target, and you and I are shooting, and we're completely missing it all over the place. We can't hit the target, whatever. We're not hitting it. So, we just can't, for whatever reason, we can't hit right here in the center. We're not doing that. So it's to miss the mark, okay? And it's called kata'ah, okay? Kata'ah, okay? So that's sin. It means to miss the mark, okay? But what our understanding is like, we got to put some practice in order to hit our mark, right? So he says, I don't understand my own behavior. I don't do what I want to do. Instead, I do the very thing I hate. That's what he does. And this is what he's telling his believers, okay? And the people that listen to him. Now, if I'm doing what I don't want to do, I'm agreeing that the Torah is good. Can somebody explain that to me?
Okay.
If I'm doing what I don't want to do, I'm agreeing that the Torah is good. Huh. But now is no longer the real me doing it. But it's the sin that's housed inside of me that's, apparently that's doing this, okay? For I know that there's nothing good housed inside me. There's nothing good. So what he's saying is that a human being is naturally depraved, that you have nothing good about you whatsoever. You don't have nothing good inside of you. How many of you guys been told that from your Christian pastor or teacher or Bible study teacher since you were a child, that you're a sinner and that you have nothing good inside of you? You can't do anything that the Creator's asking you to do. Is this true?
False.
Okay, we said it's false. Give me an example. What did the Creator say to, who's the first person that the Creator told that you could do good? Who's the first person? You guys know? I'm gonna help you out. I want you. No, he's not the first one. He's not the first one that he spoke to tell him that you could do good. Okay, but you're close. The first one that he. Well, you're a little farther. Let's go to Genesis. Okay, and we're going to go to chapter number 4. And I want you to hear the words of the Creator. Okay. It says, verse number 1, the man has sexual relations with Kawa, which that's the name of her, not Eve, her name is Kawa, right? His wife, and she conceived and gave birth to Cain. His name is not Cain, his name is Cain, and it means acquisition, okay? And then that's why she said, I have acquired a man from Yahweh. To acquire means to take possession of something, or to acquire is to take hold of something. And so Yah gave her Cain. And it says, in addition, she gave birth to his brother, Havel. And Havel kept sheep while Cain worked the soil. Okay. In the course of time, Cain brought an offering to Yahweh from the produce of the soil. Okay, which kind of ties into our Torah portion. And it says, Havel brought from the firstborn of his sheep, including their fat. So this must have been a time when things were ready to be brought forth. And so based on the text here, we understand that this is a time of harvesting, okay? You can't bring something unless it's that right time. You need a certain time to do something. So Havel also brought, from the firstborn of his sheep, including their fat. Yahweh accepted Havel and his offering, but he did not accept, which is Ratzon, Cain, right? And his offering. Cain was very angry and his face fell, meaning his countenance, the expression on his face fell. And Yahweh said to Cain, why are you angry? Why so downcast? In the New Testament, it says that Elohim has never spoken to any man. That's what it says, that the only person that he's ever spoke to was Christ in the New Testament. So now we find that is a total contradiction to what we're hearing here. Yahweh said to Cain, why are you angry? Why so downcast? Why are you so depressed? Why does your expression on your face went from being happy and smiling and being, thankful and grateful to being angry and mad and having this look in your face? He says, if you are doing what is good, meaning tov, if you're doing that which is functional and right, okay, shouldn't you hold your head high? That's the question for not only him, but for all of us. Okay. If we're doing that which is good, we're doing that which is right, we're doing that which is upright, that which is functional, that which is tov, shouldn't you hold your head up? You should hold your head up if you know that you're living in the way that you're supposed to. This is a thought that I want to bring out tonight, right quick, that if you're doing all the right things in your life and you're making every effort to do what's right and you're doing what's good, you shouldn't be depressed. Okay, don't get depressed about your situation and what their people telling you you're so-called going through. If you're doing everything that you're supposed to do in the manner you're supposed to do it, you and I should hold our head up high. That's not in being pride and arrogance. God doesn't like for us to be like looking sad, especially when you've done that which is right. Okay, so if you are doing what is good, shouldn't you hold your head high? And if you don't do what is good, sin is crouching at the door. It wants you. That's what sin wants. So now he's identifying sin as an entity, like something that can take hold of you. Sin is crouching at the door. Okay. It wants you, but what? You can rule over it. The idea that you and I don't have anything good in us is a contradiction to what Yahweh has already spoken about Havel. Okay. It's actually a contradiction what he's talking to Cain about. Cain had the opportunity and he had this in him, the ability to do good. You and I have the opportunity, and we also have the ability to do that which is good. So what does it mean when I talk about ability? Well, it's one of my favorite words that I used to use all the time. It's called responsibility. Okay. Ability. Okay. Forgive me. Responsibility. Okay. If I chop this word in half, it is response. Okay. And then here, ability. Right. So basically, responsibility means that you have the ability to respond. And you also, if you have the ability to respond, then you will be held responsible. See? So Yah's holding him responsible. He's letting him know that you have the ability to respond appropriately. Because if you're doing good, you can hold your head up high, right? But if you don't do what is good, if you choose to do something on the opposite side of that which is functional, and you decide to do that which is dysfunctional, then you find yourself in what they call kata'ah, okay? So kata'ah is missing the mark. The missing the mark means that you haven't hit that point of that desire, that end goal. The goal is to hit the mark, okay? So Yah's asking him to do that which is good, that he would actually have the ability to achieve the goal, which is to do something that's functional. So you're telling me that none of us have the ability? You're saying that we're all disabled? Because not to have the ability means to be disabled or disability, okay? You can't do certain things. I speak from my experience. I'm currently right now 100% disabled. I can't cut my yard. I can't do a lawnmower. I can't drive a car. I can't do any of those things. And that happened within 2 years. I had a surgery in my spine. So I can't do those things. I can teach, I can read, you know what I mean? I can do certain things, but you know, I can walk sometimes I can't, you know? So I know what it means to be disabled and I know what it means not to be disabled. But Yah sends whatever ability that you do have, okay? That's an opportunity to really do good. So what Paul is talking about is not true. And for those who are watching live on YouTube, you can see it right here for yourself. It's in chapter number 4. Verse number, what? 4, 5, 6, yeah, and 7. So Paul is lying. He's lying again, and he's telling us something that's not true. And this is the stuff that you and I have been taught, okay? So we're going to have to break these things. We have to break these ideas and these concepts that we've been taught since we were children, that there's nothing good in you. And the only way that you could do good is if you believe something. You can believe your way out of your sin. You can believe your way out of, not doing that which is right. So this guy here is saying in verse number 15, I don't understand my own behavior. Okay. I don't do what I want to do. Instead, I do the very thing I hate. He has a problem. Okay. Now, and that's why this is good for people like this. Okay. People actually choose to be like this. This is perfect for the individual who doesn't want to do good. This is what you call making excuses. Okay. So one person who believes this and who understands this and wants this is the one who's not willing to make the change themselves. They're putting the handcuffs on you saying you can't do it. And the only way you can get out of this and get your handcuffs taken off of you is if you believe that he would kill the innocent for the wicked. That's what the New Testament's asking you. Okay. Do you believe that? So in 16, now, if I'm doing what I don't want to do, this sounds like a mental problem to me. I'm agreeing that the Torah is good. He's introducing the Torah here because, again, he's saying that the Torah is the one that since is saying you can't keep the Torah. And every time you try to keep it, you end up sinning because you can't do it. This is why they said you can't do the offerings. That's why they said anything that you do is not pleasing to God. This is the reason why I said you can't die for your own sins, but someone else can. That's what they say. Someone else can. Someone else can die for your sins, just not you. And that's just the opposite of what Yah says. Yah says that anybody that dies, listen what he says. I'll go right here in Ezekiel, and we're going to go to chapter, and you guys have already known this, but we're just going to hit it right quick because we're always going to go over the same stuff. It says this, verse 4, chapter 18 of Ezekiel, all lives, all nefeshka belongs to me. Both the parent's life and the child's life are equally mine. So it is the person who sins himself who must die. That's the person who's going to die, not somebody else. So if you and I are doing anything, right, we're going to be held accountable and responsible for it because Yah's given us the ability to respond. Okay. To what? Not to what Paul's talking about, but to the Torah itself. So now he goes on this idea of saying, in verse number 17, but now it is no longer the real me doing it. I'm confused. Does he have a split personality? What is this? Is this a Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde? That's why they got that show out there to make you think that you got these two sides to you. You have this inherently good side that wants to do the right thing, but then you got this very evil part of you that can't do anything. When Yah says clearly that a double-minded man is unstable in all his ways, right? So they're playing on this, and they've created this idea that you have two sides to you, like you are a Gemini, like you can flip-flop between those two things. You guys have been on this class long enough to know that if anybody did any kind of deliberate intentional sin, that person was never going to be forgiven. So I don't know where this guy, is coming from when he says this, but any intentional sin, okay? So we've defined before, and I'll say it again. If sin is missing the mark, that means that you and I have a responsibility. Yah wants you to achieve a certain goal. And guess what the goal is? The goal is to make improvement. That's what he's asking us, is to make some sort of mild improvement about yourself. He's not asking us to be an expert at all times. He's not. Because he knows that you're going to make a mistake. He wants just to put the bow or the spear or the arrow in our hands and have us attempt to hit it. He knows that you're not going to hit it all the time. But guess what? If we start practicing and we start doing it on a regular basis, I guarantee you'll start hitting it more often. There's different times when you're not going to hit it. And the times that you're not going to hit it are natural occurrences. Sin is from, like I said, is bodily fluid. For the women, it's a menstrual cycle. For men, it's a similar emission in the middle of the night. For both of them, it's after they've had sexual intercourse. Wash your body. It's from touching a dead body. It's from touching an insect that he says is unclean. It's from touching a piece of meat that was unclean. It's from touching someone who has been unclean that you're not supposed to touch. You see? And so they don't want this anymore. They don't want to. Remember, we talked about this in the book of Malachi. They're upset with the fact that Yah wants them to look at the way that they live. They thought it was all so tiresome and so burdensome to do these, to do these things. But you and I have to understand the holiness of the one in whom we dwell in front of. We're not dwelling with no man. We're dwell with the living Elohim who requires us to give him the respect that he deserves. And as a result of us living among him, he says, you have to be holy. And we went over to Kodesh Shem. So even though we did Kodesh Shem the week before, and then last week we did Amor, even within there, we saw the Kodesh Shem. Okay. And we're going to see Kodesh Shem again in this Torah portion with Bahar, where Yah spoke to Moshe on the mountain and told him the things that he wanted to tell him. Okay. But I need to encourage us today to let us understand that what Yah was asking of us, okay, it is possible. You can be Kodesh Shem. You can be set apart. You can make improvements, not like what this guy is saying here. Okay. So when it says this, he says, 18, I know that there's nothing good housed inside me. That is inside my old nature. I can want what is good, but I can't do it. Not encouraging, not at all. Okay. For I don't do the good I want. Instead, the evil that I don't want is what I do. Okay. So he's saying I'm practicing evil. But if I'm doing what the real me doesn't want to do, doesn't want, it is no longer the real me doing it, but the sin housed in me. So the sin that's housed in him is not the sin that's housed in us. Okay. And I want to be clear. Okay. What he's talking about here for himself is in his mind. This is Paul. Just remember who's writing this. He's saying what's going on with him. And for you and I to automatically relate to this and say that we understand this is because you and I are looking for a reason and an excuse. And this is the trick. If I can be tricked in thinking that all I got to do is believe that I'm free, then I'm free if I believe it. That's the power of suggestion. That's the power of the law of attraction. All these different things that people are saying. Okay. So we are starting off automatically defeated. There's no possibility that you'll have any success because he's already defeated you. Okay. So in 21, he says, so I find it to be the rule, a kind of perverse Torah. You hear what he just said? That although I want what is good, evil is right there with me. It's not only with him, he says it's in me. His sin. So you're telling me that Yahweh would give us laws and statutes and commandments, and he doesn't have any expectation of us keeping it because he knows that you and I are depraved and we can't do it? Why would our Creator set something in front of us and speak to us from a mountain out of fire, okay, and show himself as glorious and powerful and deliver us out of slavery just so he can bring us out and give us laws and statutes and commandments that he says, by the way, are forever, if he didn't have an expectation? He has always had an expectation from us. He brought us out to be a people unto himself. So if you and I are taking these ideas that are coming from the New Testament, okay, the new agreement, okay, they're trying to get you to turn your back on the Torah in a very slick way. 22 says, for in my inner self, my real inner self, I completely agree with God's Torah. Do you hear this back and forth? Playing mind games, which means that you can turn it on when you want to and you can turn it off when you don't want to. That means you're open to anything. I could be an adulterer and then go back to the altar later on and say, I'm sorry. I could sit there and watch pornography all day long. And then on Sunday morning, get up and go to church and act like I'm clean and cry about it. You see, I could beat my wife and kids. No, I don't. What they say that you can, because that's your old nature and you're trying to tame that. But the inner you don't want to do it, but you don't have no choice. You don't have no choice about being a drug addict. You don't have any kind of choice in that. None, because that's who you are. That's your old nature. So now that they're giving you an additional nature, you get two natures now. But I thought when Yah made us, he made us in his image and in his likeness. I thought that he breathed the breath of life into us. I heard what he said over in Genesis, that you could do good. And sin cannot have control over you. Is he lying in Ezekiel 18, where he tells us that you can make and change your mind? You can think about what's happened to you? Why would I give you a mind if you can't use it? I'm asking you in Deuteronomy chapter number 30 to use that so-called old nature that Paul told you about. I'm asking you to use that mind to think about what has happened to you. Is that the sinful nature that's thinking about that, or is that the inner you that's thinking about that? Which one of you is doing it? You see? So people have what they call the evil twin, the one that they need to place the blame on. And that is the one that so-called Christ died for. He didn't die for the inner you, according to him. He died for the other you. So which one did he really die for? Now you split me in half and say that I have good in me, and you also say that I'm evil out the same mouth. So which one of Paul here is talking? Is it the one who's evil that's telling us this? Or is it the good side of Paul that's telling us this? How do you know? How do you know that he's not sent to test you to find out if you really love Yah, according to Deuteronomy chapter number 13? How do we know that he's not speaking out of his evil side right now? If he already said that I got two natures, you would automatically assume that the other nature that he's talking to us out is the good nature because he wrote it down. How do you know that? How can we trust this? Listen. He says, listen carefully, just listen. 21, so I find it to be the rule. What rule? A kind of perverse Torah. That although I want to do good, evil is right there with me. For my inner self, I completely agree with God's Torah. Then what's the problem? He didn't finish it. He didn't put a period right here. He didn't. He used a semicolon. Why? Because he's about to explain to you about how he completely agrees with God's Torah. Okay. He says, but in my various parts, I wonder what those parts are. What parts is he talking about? What other parts of him, his various parts, does he not completely agree? He says in my various parts, in the little compartments of his mind, that I see a different Torah. One that battles the Torah in my mind and makes me a prisoner of sin's Torah. So now he's saying that that sin has a Torah. Sin has a Torah. Sin has instructions, which is operating in my various parts. What various parts? I'm not trying to be X-rated. I'm going to tell you, we're all adults here. The word carnal that they use, and you can look it up on Google, has to do with animalistic tendencies. Okay. Animalistic tendencies. Okay. The only thing that he's saying that people are concerned when he talks about his various parts, he's talking about his manly parts. That's what he's talking about. That's what he's talking about. If you notice, all they ever talk about is how evil and how wicked it is for a man to be with a woman. Remember, he didn't want anybody, he wanted everybody to be like him, not to be with a woman, right? But, you know, if you are going to do it, then, you know, make sure you marry so you don't burn with lust and all this kind of stuff, right? So what they've done is they turned the natural order of what Yah considers to be wholesome, okay, to making it filthy and unclean. So when you look at your body, or you look at the time where you and a husband or a wife get together now, for you to want to do that is completely against the Torah, because that's your lust that's burning inside of you. You're a sinner because you have an erection. You are a complete sinner and going to be put in hell if you're a woman who wants to desire to lay with your husband and you have children. That's what this is about. I'm just being honest with you. Okay. The New Testament is there to design in order to prevent you from being fruitful, in order for you to be all of a sudden, now you're a spiritual person. There's nothing you could do. If you notice, every time Yah talks to us about our uncleanness, it has to do with our bodies. Am I lying, or is it the truth? This is the truth. So they make you ashamed of your body. They make you ashamed of that process. That right there is a kadosh process. That's a set apart time. And the relationship between a husband and wife is indicative of the relationship between Yah and his people. That's why he calls her my wife. And I'm your husband. You understand? So we need to understand where they're coming from. Okay. Why do you think the priest and the religious people today don't want to have men marrying women? Why do you think there's nuns? Why do you think they're taking celibacy? Why do you think that, they all of a sudden they made Peter all of a sudden now he's a saint, right? Why? Because they don't want them. They think anything if eating the kind of food that you want is carnal. They think if you're sexually active with your wife, you're carnal. If you want to be married to a woman, you're carnal. If anything you do, but it has to do with your body. Okay. So this is where this is coming from. Okay. So his various parts that he's talking about is that he had a problem. Okay. He said, what a miserable creature I am. You see how he put that on there? What a miserable creature I am. Who will rescue me from this body bound for death? In context, this whole chapter right here, chapter number 7, just to let you know, chapter number 7 is talking about marriage. That's what it's talking about. You can read it on your own because he talks about a husband and wife. That's what he's talking about. Okay. So guess what he says? Thanks be to God. He will, through the Yeshua, the Messiah, our Lord, right? Who's going to deliver him from this death, right? He said, to sum it up, with my mind, I am a slave of God's Torah. With my mind. But with my old nature, I'm a slave of sin's Torah. I didn't know the Torah had there was a sin Torah. You see how they're putting these words in here? You see? So he's saying that you can never be able to do what Yah wants you to do, because this brings death to a person. Who will rescue me from this body bound for death? Death is for those who are trying to keep it. You understand? Any questions so far? Any comments so far? Because I'm going to take you where Yahweh says something now. Listen what Yah says. Leviticus 18 says this. Yahweh said to Moshe, speak to the people of Israel. Tell them, I am Yahweh your Elohim. You are not to engage in the activities found in the land of Mizraim, where you used to live. Okay? You are not to engage in the activities found in the land of Canaan, where I am bringing you. You are to live, nor are you to live by their laws. Okay, the kukim. Okay, these laws here is not Torah. The laws here are called the kok. Okay, they're called kok, and when you have two of them, the kokim, more than one. Okay, so they have kukim, and what he's talking about. Okay, listen to me carefully. When Yah's talking about the activities, engaging in the activities. Okay, every activity he's telling you about is about idol worship and it's about sexual. He's telling you how to monitor your sexual behavior. And why? Because your sexual behavior will determine whether or not you will destroy your house and you destroy the community. These people were the people in Egypt and the people in the land of Canaan were engaged in sexual practices, as you see right here. I'm not going to read the whole thing, But he tells you right here, if you read this chapter for your own benefit, you should have read it through your Torah portion. He says sexual relations, your close relative. You can't do that. You cannot do this, okay? And he talks about not doing it, but he also says that you are to live, or excuse me, obey my rulings, okay, my mishpatim, my kukim, and live accordingly, right? I am Yahweh, your Elohim. That's why he brought us out. You are to observe, meaning guard my Torah and my mishpatim. If a person does them, he will have life through them. I am Yahweh. Somebody is lying. Somebody's lying. Yah has told us that you can be kadosh, and you must be kadosh. But also, to the point I wanted to bring out here is that you and I, if you and I, the person who does them, does what? The kukim, the mishpatim. The mishpatim, the kukim, live accordingly. He or she will have life through them. Through what? The laws and through the rulings. I am Yahweh. None of you is to approach anyone who's a close relative in order to have sexual relations. I am Yahweh. If I'm your Elohim, you're not going to do this. You're not going to have sexual relationships with your father. You're not going to have a sexual relationship with your mother, because this is what these sick maniacs was doing. And I'm pretty sure that the children of Israel adopted those ways. Trust me, you can't live in an environment with a group of people and don't think you're going to get a little on you. Okay? That's the truth. We're living in a place right now where the habits and the behaviors of these people have spilled off into our families, into our own mindsets. Shalom. 6:3, my spirit shall not always strive with man. Who wrote this? Let's see. There was something here. Oh, yes. Akoti Renee had said, I was wondering if this has something to do with the scripture of Genesis 6:3. My spirit shall not always strive with man, for that he is also flesh. And that idea there is to want man is to always want to learn from Yah. He's not going to always listen to me. He's not going to contend with me. He's going to give up. And because he's going to give up, what happened? I'm going to have to destroy him, a certain group of them. So I wanted to show you that, okay? Because that's what we're talking about. Yah has promised us, if we were to live the way that he told us, that you can have life. But according to Paul, you're going to have death. And he said the only way you're going to get out of this is through Yeshua the Messiah. And you and I have been lied to and told that that's the only way. So let's minimize the Torah and say, now let's say that there's a Torah in you. Now, question is this: why is he telling these people, the Romans, who are not Israel? Why is he talking to them? Because he, based on what he said, I'm an apostle to who? To the Gentiles. He's not writing this to the children of Israel. He ain't writing this to the lost tribes. He's writing this to the Romans, to the people who decided that they didn't want to be circumcised and come in and be part of their new organization. That's who he's writing to. You understand? So he's telling them, okay, that, me, I couldn't do it. I couldn't perform the Torah. So I know that you Gentiles who by nature can't perform anything, nothing's ever been given to you. I understand how you are. Let me bring you in and show you that I've been here and I still don't know how to do it. Okay, so this is Paul's letter. Yah says something totally different. The Torah is not deaf to you and I. It can be if you don't obey it. Moshe said, I sit two ways before you. He said, I sit one way of life and I sit the other death. You must choose which way you're going to go. This woman that I saw this video was so excited, okay? She was jumping. She knew for sure 100% that she was not going to be guilty. And she quoted this: therefore, there is no longer any condemnation awaiting those who are in union with the Messiah Yeshua. which they have as Christ, the Jesus. She was 100% confident that, guess what? I'm not going to be judged. Because in Yeshua, there's life. That's what she was taught. And guess what? She's a Goyim. She's from the nations. My point is this: you and I are not from the nations. We have been set apart by Yahweh, and he loves us. He loves you and I, a chosen people, selected out of all peoples on the face of this earth. He never spoke to them. Yahweh has never spoken to any of those people. He's never given them his laws. He's never had any relationship with them. But let's prove it. Several places I can show you. Let's go to Psalms 147 right quick. And this is what it said in verse number 19. He reveals his words to Yaakov and his Kukim and his Mishpatim to Yisrael. He has not done this for other nations. They do not know his rulings. Hallelujah. They don't know him. You understand? So get your mind wrapped around the idea that Yahweh has never dealt with anybody else and given his laws and his statutes, his Kukim and his Mishpatim, to nobody but Yisrael. And as Aki, Yered had said, he gave it to him on the mountain. He told him what it was going to be. Our Elohim has instructed us and told us exactly what it's going to be. And we have been acting as if he's been unfair to us. We've been making excuses on why we can't do these things because you've been told all your life that you don't have the ability to do it and that you're naturally depraved because you create and because you use your body. You know, oh, it's terrible. It's a terrible thing. You got to stay away from your body. You got to stay away from any of that kind of stuff. So what you do is just pray and cry and then go sneak off and do your dirt instead of what she's normally supposed to be doing. We never live like these people. I just want to make that clear. Okay. So listen what this guy says in closing. He's saying that they're going to live and not be don't receive no judgment. And he asks the question, why? Because the Torah of the Spirit. So now we got another Torah. That's why he says the Torah is of the Spirit. What Spirit? They're saying it's the Holy Spirit, which produces this life in union with the Messiah. So if you don't trust in the Messiah, you don't get this Spirit. This new spirit of the Torah. See, because that's what you're after. You're after the Spirit. But you and I both know that the Creator told us that you and I don't have his Spirit. We don't have his Spirit. Which produces this life in union. So he's saying the Spirit produces something. Just like in our Torah portion, we're going to talk about this week, probably on Yom Kamishi, where he talks about that which the land produces. Whatever the land produces is the fruit of that land. So he's saying that the Spirit, if you have the Torah of the Spirit, the instructions of the Spirit, which produces this life in union, a life of no condemnation, the Messiah with him, he has set me free from the Torah of sin and death. He's saying there's a Torah for sin and there's a Torah for death, which totally contradicts what we've read when Yah says that I have set this before you and it will give you life. If you do what I say, you get to live. Okay? And also, he says this, for what the Torah could not do by itself, because it lacked the power to make the old nature cooperate. The Torah, he's saying the Torah. The Torah, did you notice he didn't say the Torah of sin? Did you notice he didn't say the Torah of anything? He's just now said the Torah. You see how he's using the Torah of sin and death, and then all of a sudden, and then the Torah of the Spirit, and now he's put another Torah, The regular Torah. Now the Torah could not do it by itself. Do what? The Torah, he's saying the Torah could not produce this kind of life, that a life of no condemnation, because he's saying if you broke anything in the Torah, you were going to be put to death. And that's not true. You weren't put to death because you had an uncleanness about you. You were not put to death if you cheated someone on an accident. And if you did get caught cheating on something, Yah says that you have to pay back that which you took and also 20%. You weren't put to death if you stole something in somebody's house during the day. If it was at night, you would be killed. If you did get killed, it was if you got killed. So this idea of them creating, saying that the Torah could not do it, it doesn't have the power to do it, is a complete lie. It said it don't have the power. So the old nature will cooperate. Do you hear what this guy just said? He said that our nature, our so-called, he calls it old. Do you want to know why he's calling it old? Huh? Why is he? He's calling it old because he's making a reference to the old covenant. The nature that goes along with that. That's why he's saying the old nature. And I'm going to give you the new nature that matches with the New Testament. The old nature goes with the Old Testament. Don't you get it? It's all word games. You see? Somebody got to tell me you see this. He says that the old nature would not cooperate, and the Torah did not have any power because it lacked the power to make the old nature cooperate. God did by sending his own son as a human being with the nature like our own sinful nature, right? Sinful, without sin. So he sent somebody with us who has like our nature, our own sinful nature, but he doesn't have any sin. So which one is it? God did this in order to deal with sin. In so doing, he executed the punishment against sin in human nature, so that the just requirement of the Torah might be fulfilled in us who do not run our lives according to what the old nature wants, but according to what the Spirit wants. So he's saying that you and I can fulfill what the Torah demands, right? If you and I run our lives according to what our old nature wants. Don't run your life like that. But it's saying the Torah might be fulfilled. The requirement of the Torah, right? So you could get out of your sin if you live according to what the Spirit wants. But the only way you can get the Spirit is if you believe in Yeshua. That's the only way you can get it. You see? So what he's done now is they put a middleman in between you and the Creator. And now you don't have to be responsible for death anymore. We're going to have someone else take your place. And then when he takes the place, once he does this for you, you got to believe that God would kill the innocent in order to let you walk free. That's what you got to believe in order for you to be set free from your death. That you're not the death on the earth like everyone else, but he's going to set you free from the death of the eternal death that no one knows anything about, that no one's ever seen. You see? So you're getting sold a bill of goods, okay, for something you have never seen in your whole entire life. 23 says this in Exodus, verse number 7, I believe it is. You tell me if this is true. Yah says, keep away from fraud and do not cause the death of the innocent and the righteous. Why? Why should you not do that? Why should you not kill the innocent? For I, meaning Yahweh, will not justify the wicked by what? By the death of the innocent and the righteous. There you go. So you're telling me that he's going to kill the innocent and the righteous to justify the wicked, to let the wicked go free? Is that what they're saying? Is that what they got us believing? The reason why we believe that, folks, is simply because we didn't want to read. We don't want to read. We don't want to read the Torah. We don't want to study the Torah. If you read and study the Torah, you'll find that Yah says, I don't justify the wicked by killing the innocent or the righteous. But they want you to get the Spirit because there's nothing inside of you that can perform the Torah. Meaning like you don't have no capacity whatsoever to do the Torah. because the Torah requires death for sin. And if that's the case, then a woman who had a baby should be put to death. Am I correct? There's always going to be children. There's always going to be uncleanness. So if we look at the elements of the sin and we look at what Yah has ascribed to sin and what it is, and there's several different types of sin, by the way. You know, there's one that's deliberate and there's one that's on an accident and there's one that naturally happens. You see, right? Is that what Yah did? Matter of fact, here's another thing. When Cain had got the warning that sin was at the door, crouching to control him, Yah told him that you can control it. You can control sin. Okay. The sin that he's talking about is that desire, that inward person, that inward man or woman, right? The real you, not the other half of you, the real you has to make that decision. You don't get a dual personality. The people that got killed in the flood, they all had one mind, and that mind was to go against the Creator. Everybody that Yah didn't let go into the land, they didn't have a double mind. They had one mind. We're not going to do what he says. Why did not Caleb have that double mind? What kind of nature did he have? He said he had a different type of spirit. What kind of spirit? Was it the spirit that God gave him or Yah gave him when he killed the innocent and let the, go? And then Caleb got the spirit and then he decided to do what Yah said. Is that what Joshua did? Is that what Noah did? Is that what Abraham did? Did they have the spirit? Why did they do good? If you, right? You and I don't have a spirit right now. So you're telling me and you can't do good? You're telling me you and I can't think about what's happened to us and we can't make a decision and we're not going to do that which is wrong anymore? You're telling me that I can't make a decision not to hold a grudge against any of my people? Are you telling me that I cannot charge them? I don't have it in me not to charge them interest? You're telling me that I can't be faithful to my wife? It's not in me. Is that what you're telling me? You're telling me that I could go, sleep with my father's wife? That's in me. It sounds like I always got a choice, doesn't it? So Yah's always given us the ability to make choice. And that's when he uses that word ratzon, which means of your own free will. You and I can choose to do good or we can choose to do evil. That's what he wants us to know. You can choose to be this way if you want to. You could choose to listen to Paul if you want to. Either you can listen to what Paul says and say that the Torah brings death, or you can listen to what Yah says, if you follow the Torah, it brings life. Which one are you going to listen to? It's your choice. Yah has allowed people to come into our lives to find out what you're going to do. You think Yah doesn't test us? I went over this before. You don't think he'll send a false prophet? He sends them to find out whether or not you're going to listen to him or you're going to listen to the word of Elohim. And to me personally, I believe that's the best way to test somebody to see if you really truly love them. I think everybody should be tested. I think every product. Would you eat food that has never been tested? Would you drive a car that's never went through any quality control? Would you? No, you wouldn't. Everything got to be tested. Everything has to be tried. Everything has to be put under great extreme pressure to know whether or not it's going to be suitable or is it going to be reliable and dependable. The plants are tested. Everything, every vitamin that you had is tested. It's regulated by the Food and Drug Administration. Every product, facial product, everything you get has been tested. But all of a sudden now, Yah doesn't have a right to test you to find out if you're going to be faithful. See? So no, you could do it. You can live the way that Yah told you can live, and there's no excuse. Absolutely none. That's your lesson for tonight. I wanted to show you that because this week, as we continue in our Torah portion, we're going to find out about how Yah feels about the land and how he feels about oppression and how he feels about how we treat one another and how we deal with each other. But if you have the mindset that there's no good in you and you're always prone to commit sin, then everything he's going to tell you this week won't mean anything to you. So we got to set the foundation right for this week, that you do have the responsibility to Yah, and you can respond accordingly and appropriately. And guess what? The choice is yours. He put them in the garden and told them what? He put the tree there. Why? Why did he put the tree there?
To test them.
I want to test you. That's what he did. He put them there. And he put the tree there. God wants to know, do you want to serve me or you don't? Why do you think he put us over here and they all scattered all over the four corners of the world? What is that about? Tell me.
Same thing.
I'm testing you. If I set two trees in front of you, a tree of life and a tree of knowledge and good and evil, you don't think I'll put two different scrolls in front of you? You don't think I would put the New Testament versus the Old? The old is what I said, the ancient way or the new way. Which way do you want? Do you want the new and improved way to get to me? That I never spoke at one time at all? I never put my name in there at one time? You guys don't find that to be kind of interesting that Yah has never spoken to nobody in the New Testament? His name is not mentioned not one time. Not one time? You don't find that odd that every book there has an anonymous writer in the four gospels? That doesn't bother you? It doesn't bother you to tell you don't need to do circumcision? Are you not bothered by the fact that he tells you that I know that you heard it's been said, but I say unto you? You don't find it troublesome then all of a sudden all of our promises are negated and there's no talk about the land and our fathers, but now all the world is invited in order to take over our heritage and to take on upon our name and to claim that they have a relationship with our Elohim by just calling him God and disrespected him and never called him by his name, an eternal name that he gave to us for here and into eternity. You don't find that odd where they tell the women to submit to their husbands, submit, and in the same context tells the slave to submit to their masters? You don't find that to be a little odd when he tells you to drink his blood and eat his body? You don't find that as any no way odd when Yah clearly says that anyone who eats blood is to be cut off from his people? You don't find that strange that it's 12 disciples instead of there being 12 sons of Yisrael? You don't find that to be strange? That all of a sudden now you got somebody, the innocent, dying when the whole time the Yah has told Israel that I never have ever told you to kill your own kids and shed innocent blood in the land? You don't find that strange at all. A mysterious city coming out of the sky with no temple whatsoever? When the prophets had clearly stated, Yah says, I'm going to build my temple and I will live with the children of Israel forever, and then the nations will know that I'm Yahweh when my sanctuary is with them forever. You don't find that odd and strange that Yah says that I'm going to have David and descendants of his descendants forever as the stars in the sky? And he shall never not have a man stand before me, neither him nor the Leviim who call on him, to always have somebody to stand at my altar and bring sacrifices to me? You don't find that odd and strange? They never talk to us about the promises that were made to us and our ancestors. You better wake up and understand who you're dealing with. You understand? You better stop listening to human beings. You need to listen to the instructions that Yahweh gave to Moshe, that he's given to every last one of the generations. And you and I have been graced with this. Yah has shown us mercy in these last days by waking us up to who he is and what his name is. And I can almost put my life on it tonight that nobody in your church ever told you Yahweh's name. I can almost bet my life that no one ever told you about your heritage. Bet you never told you that the land has a Shabbat. They never told you. And they had no intention of telling you that even if you touched an insect, that your creator says you're unclean. You don't like that, huh? Because you've been touching everything and you still want to go in his face and say that you're blessed and that you're clean and you're right before his eyes. Because these goyim, these heathens, have told you and I that come as you are, he'll accept you. He doesn't hate the sinner. He hates the sin. You guys don't find that strange and odd? I do. Yeah, I do. Any contributions, questions, statements?